Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Portland, Maine Board of Education Finance, Personnel, and Operations Committee meeting on December 8th, 2025. It is 6:03 p.m. and we are getting started. I am Sarah Bryden. I'm the chair of the committee. Let's see, with us we have Board Member Opperman, who is also a member of the committee. Checking to see if we might have some other committee members that are needing to get moved over. Okay, we don't, but hopefully they will be able to join soon. We also have with us some members of our staff. We have Dr. Scallon, Superintendent. From Finance, we have Lisa Beck and Heather Peters. And then from HR, we have Rosa King. And it is the very, very top of the meeting. So I think we might also see some folks joining as we go. There's Board Member Sawtell, who is on the committee. Great timing, Board Member Sawtell. That was perfect. Just as everybody sort of gets situated and does all the clicks of getting their camera and their audio and all that stuff, I will share that. We are going to have a really full and hopefully productive conversation today. We're going to, it is always budget season, but we are heading into the thick of it. We're going to get a conversation led by staff about to sort of prepare for the FY26 budget process, do some foundational grounding on that. We are going to review a number of policies as part of a broader policy review that the board is doing. For those of you that have joined, watched, viewed recordings of recent meetings, you'll know that what we're doing is we're going through a few at a time, policies that have some relevance for the finance, personnel, and operations topics, taking a look at whether this committee thinks there's any need to make adjustments, and then taking those recommendations and moving them along so that the policy committee and our legal counsel can take those recommendations into account as part of their work. So it's going to be a great 80 something minutes. I will say that we do have a time constraint because several of us have a 7:30 meeting as well. So I'm going to do my very best to get us through all this content in time for folks to be able to actually step away from the Zoom for at least a couple minutes in between meetings. The next part, before I turn it over to staff, I'm going to check and see if there's anybody who'd like to give public comment. If you would like to give public comment, what you would do is you would raise your Zoom hand. And if there's anybody who does that to give public comment, I will go through the policies and procedures related to that. And I do see one person. So if we could get Tracy with her Zoom hand up, moved over so that she can unmute. While that's going on, I will read the public comment guidelines. So as a reminder, this might be familiar to many, but just to give a reminder, members of the public can speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the schools, except for personnel matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students. Those need to be addressed through established policies and procedures. Comments are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes, 6 if you're using an interpreter. You cannot relinquish a portion of your time to another speaker. Committee members are not going to respond to comments. And then anybody who's giving public comment must refrain from engaging in disruptive conduct, including but not limited to using vulgar or obscene language, threatening others using words or by other actions, using pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or a group on the basis of their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, or other identity factor, making defamatory comments, exceeding the allotted time limits, talking over or interrupting others, offering repetitive comments, and offering comment on matters unrelated to the district's programs, policies, or operations. If there's anything that's contrary to these rules, I will stop public comment. And I will keep the time with a 30-second remaining reminder. So Tracy is over here now with us, and I will turn the floor over to you for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi, Sarah, or Chair Bryden, thank you so much. I'm going to try to talk super fast. I hope I might get an extra 30 seconds if I'm running long. I reside at 90 Prospect Street. I'm a parent and a former consultant to the district. And thanks so much for opening up for public comment. I know you have a stacked agenda. I would like to speak to the policy reviews that are on your agendas this November and December, specifically regarding Book C policies around the superintendent, job description evaluation, and org plan policies. It's unclear to me exactly what the process is for evaluating these policies and determining whether they'd benefit from revision. And it's possible, it seems that this work could exist between this committee and the policy committee. So I'd love clarification on that. I understand that we're discussing these policies at a high level rather than looking at specifics for this superintendent, but I will admit that current concerns are driving my attention to this area. Overall, in reviewing the policies, I'm struck by the lack of transparency and process, both in the stated policies and in communication with the public. And I'm just going to do three examples real quickly. CBI says that the board will evaluate the superintendent on a schedule determined by the board, but I can find neither any suggested cadence, the current schedule, nor results of evaluations anywhere in board docs. So the board might consider revising the policy for both transparency and accountability. At a bare minimum, it seems to me that the schedule of evaluations should be posted and opportunities for the public to weigh into their board members could be publicized. Second, CBI and CBI R1 describe the board's tool for superintendent evaluation, but I can't find any description of the board's process or measures used to assess the superintendent's performance on this performance task with its rubric. For example, how does each board member assess Standard 7, which is the collective efficacy for results in which the superintendent's expected to foster a professional community among staff? Our board members visiting schools and central office, talking with staff and teachers, or engaging in direct observation of the superintendent at work with staff for this standard. It seems that just sitting, I want to make it clear that being in all these meetings, which you all give so much of your time, but that would be relying on superintendent self-evaluations and self-presentation to assess. And it seems important to get both valid and accurate assessment data, just like teachers do, that we need to get out and have some more direct assessment measures. And so we could talk about that for every standard, but I would encourage the addition of specific assessment techniques to the policy so that each board member has clear expectations of their evaluative role. And then
30
thirdly, I'll just
seconds.
talk about
30 seconds.
oh boy. Okay, I'll talk quicker. CCA, the policy outlining the org plan, specifies both the superintendent's and the board's roles. It says the superintendent shall have freedom to reorganize lines of authority and to revise the organizational chart subject to board approval of major changes and or elimination and creation of positions. The board expects the superintendent to keep the administrative structure up to date. That's great and specific, but I found several out-of-date org charts on the website. The most recent is more than a year old from April of 24. The superintendent has definitely made major org changes since, including the creation and hiring of the chief of schools and academics position.
Tracy,
And
you are at time.
I'm at time.
I did give you a little bit more time.
Okay,
Completely appreciate your engagement and your thoughts. And I'd also invite you to email the committee
sure.
board as a whole with the rest of your insights.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right. I do not see any other attendees. So I will close public comment at this point, and I will turn it over to Superintendent Scanlon to walk us through the kickoff to fiscal year 26 budget process.
Yes, thank you, Chair Bryden. This year, we are going through a similar process that we've gone through in past years, which includes looking at our performance relative to the strategic plan, engaging with staff and leaders about potential investments, and in our central office, starting with a zero-based budget. And so making sure that we to the board can justify every purchase that is included in the budget. This year, we are adding a new piece that we are going to share with you tonight. And we got this idea from just, again, thinking about our past conversations as a board and staff and thinking about what would be helpful. And so tonight, we're going to share with you what we're calling, for lack of a better term, a roll forward budget. And so this is not fully changing our process, but is instead helping share with the board what the budget would be if there were no changes in programming, no significant changes in staffing, and factors in some assumptions around benefits, contract pieces. And so what it's designed to do is sort of give you a sense of, before we talk about any changes, what would it be as a budget overall? And folks who are watching this should not listen to this and say, oh, staff is proposing this. In fact, it is simply a what is current and looking at it 1 year from now. And so wanted to share that. I'm actually going to turn it over to Lisa and Heather Peters to walk us through it. And so I'm going to mute myself and pull up the slides.
And also Fatuma is on the attendees. If you'd pull her over, please.
Thank you, Board Member Opperman, for catching that.
All right, well, hello everyone. Before I jump into the roll forward budget, I did just want to do a quick reminder of what happens month by month between now and June. So in December, we are collecting feedback from staff around potential new investments and needs for the next year. New, as the superintendent mentioned, we are going to review the roll forward budget tonight, which is a new part of the process. In January, then we will come back to this committee with investment requests based on the feedback received from staff. February is when the public forum begins. March is when this committee will actually see the full budget with all of the investments built in, and the superintendent will present the recommended budget to the board. March typically is when the first joint city and school finance committee meeting happens. In April will be the second joint city and school finance committee meeting and a first and second reading of the recommended budget, along with the public hearing and vote to recommend the budget to the city council. In May, the city council will go through their 2 readings of the budget, public hearing, and vote for school board budget to referendum, and then June is when that referendum happens. So if we can go to the next slide. So as the superintendent mentioned, roll forward budget is something new that we're doing this year, that it just really looks at, if we carry on existing programming and factor in known growth, what would the budget be without adding anything net new in terms of new initiatives? We will continue to refine this as we go through further iterations of the budget. And there are some assumptions and placeholders that we did have to build into this roll forward budget to address things that are just unknown at this early stage. So I'm going to take you through what those assumptions are. So if we can go to the next slide, please. From a revenue standpoint, we are assuming at this point that the state revenue will remain at the current level. The 279 form from the state isn't actually released until January, so we don't have those figures yet. And it's also worth reminding that reduced enrollment will not actually affect this FY27 budget. It will actually come in FY28 due to the 2-year cycle. We are making an assumption that food service revenues will remain the same as FY26. From a grant revenue, in this roll forward budget, we've made an assumption that we will decrease by $478,000. That's due to a homelessness grant that we know will not continue, and an assumed 5% reduction in title funds, which is similar to what we saw in FY26. And then lastly, from a revenue standpoint, we are assuming a $3.9 million fund balance usage, which is what we budgeted for FY26. If we can go to the next slide, please. From a personnel expenditure, we have made one change this year where we are using Staff's actual salaries for the budget projection versus using an average as we have in 26 and years past. That gives us more precision in the numbers, and as a result, salary and benefits will actually increase by less than it otherwise would have because the increase is offset by just getting more precise with the numbers. Current contractual language around cost of living and lane and step adjustments is incorporated into the roll forward budget, as well as the $1,000 increase for teachers with a special ed caseload. Health insurance premiums we are estimating will increase by 9%, as those numbers are not yet known. Total benefits by 6%. Where it exists, we have incorporated contractual language that caps the total increase to the district. We did include a decrease in staffing based on enrollment numbers from October 1st, but we did not include in this roll forward budget any change in class size. The vacancy rate, we've carried forward the 0.75% vacancy rate assumption that we used in FY26. And all other wages, so that your stipends, your differentials, your teacher additional pay, those are all held flat. So if we can go to the next slide, please. In the non-personnel, we have included a 2% increase as a placeholder for how much the cost of goods will increase. Non-recurring expenses from FY26 have been removed from this roll forward budget. Utilities costs we did project based on past 2 years actuals because the 2% we were using for everything else just won't cut it for utilities. So we did have to increase at a higher rate there. We are continuing to expect higher contracted services in 27 as we did in 26, as we using those contracted services to fill hard to fill positions. And then lastly, we have factored in changes in debt service based on the debt schedule. So where that all leads us, if we go to the next slide, please. We are looking at, in this roll forward budget, $176.3 million in expenditures, which is 4.6 million increase or 2.7%. Salaries and benefits are projected to go up by 6.5 million. Again, that's all those contractual increases, which is a 4.8% increase. Non-personnel expenses, excluding debt service, are expected to increase by 775,000 or 3.4%. And then debt service will actually decrease by 2.7 million as we do have some pension bonds that are being paid off during FY26. So that's a 19.8% decrease there. So if we can go to the next slide. So where all of these assumptions and conclusions that I've just shared bring us is the increase in expenditures and the decrease in revenue would estimate a 6.13 million increase or 4.82% in school funding from property taxes. So if we assume an average home value of 566,600, property owners would see a $176 increase on their annual property tax bill. And it's just a reminder, a good way to think about this is for every $100,000 we add to the tax levy, we add $2.88 to the property tax. There are a couple of levers the board can actually use, though, to affect these numbers. And so we will be looking for board guidance on that. So if we go to the next slide. One area that we would need some feedback from the board is around the vacancy rate. This is one of the areas where we could impact that tax levy. We've conservatively factored 0.75%, but our actual so far this year is trending in the 4 to 5% year to date. So we could factor in a larger vacancy saving, which will impact the numbers. It does give us less room to adjust should unplanned needs arise during the year. And it's important to note that it could, there's just more risk involved because if we do actually manage to fill all the positions, we could go over budget. The other area that is where there's room for some changes is the fund balance. We've factored it in at the same level as FY26, but the board could choose to add fund balance, which would then bring down that tax levy. I did think it was worth noting, though, that in the prior 2 years, we've budgeted more fund balance than we've actually used. So with that, I'm going to pause for questions.
Thank you, Lisa. That was a great way to kick us off. Gonna check and see. I do have questions, but I always like to there, give everybody the opportunity. Board Member Sawtelle, go ahead.
Hi, would significant changes in the administrative contract, the PAA contract or base contract affect the budget in a significant way?
It could. I mean, we do not know what those numbers will be, and so we have a placeholder based on the current contract. We would see those numbers change depending on what the negotiation team lands on.
And
Mhm.
gosh, I forgot my second question. It doesn't matter. I'm nervous, I'll just say up front about vacancy because uh, I don't think we should be hoping for vacancies. And it almost seems like, that would be like we'd be bummed out if we were fully staffed, and that's not where I would like to go, especially since it's usually special ed type positions that aren't filled. So if I think of my other one, I'll raise my hand
I'll
again.
watch for the Zoom hand. Yes. Lisa, I do have a couple questions. So the slide that said the non-recurring expenses were not included, that makes sense to me. You're not going to budget for yonder pouches all over again, for example. I'm curious about whether there's a placeholder for non-recurring expenses generally in case, in FY27 there is a need for something in that category of, one-time investment. Or is it basically a null value line item in the roll forward?
So the roll forward does not include any kind of net new
Yeah.
things, net new one-time expenses.
Hmm.
All it includes is the placeholder of 2% increase on the cost
Okay.
of goods.
Okay. No, that's helpful. Um, and I'm curious, the other question that I have is the slide that was talking about getting board guidance on the tax levy and the fund balance usage. I want to clarify whether you're looking for that guidance today or sort of broadly over the course of this budget process. It's the second, right?
It's the second.
Okay, good. Just wanting to make sure that's clear for everybody. The this whole process I'm actually like legitimately excited to start this process because it gives us the opportunity to sort of like learn, all of the things that you were explaining and then start to, talk about, for example, class sizes. You alluded to that as being something that might sort of influence where these conversations go, but we're not going to get to all of that in tonight's meeting. So yeah, this is a great kickoff to that broader process. Board Member Sawtelle, I see you remembered your question.
Can you, because I'm new and this is my first budget, what is fund balance? What is that?
It's a fund reserve of unused funds from past years that we're able to choose to pull to budget usage of some funds from that. So it reduces our reserves essentially if we use it.
And if I can, we don't have our audited financials from this past year yet, right? We will get those in January, February window. And so these are unaudited rough estimates, but just to give a sense, 2 years ago, we budgeted to use, I think, $3.6 million in fund balance. And because of vacancies and otherwise unspent, I think we used close to like $600,000. And so it's oftentimes the case that we budget for it, right? Board members, I'll tell to your point around like not wanting to hope for vacancies. And when we then have the vacancies, we end up not spending the fund balance because the way the budget really works is the fund balance only gets pulled once you go past how much you get in grants and in local revenue. And so it's more like the savings account you tap into than anything else.
Board Member Opperman, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. My questions are not, I mean, the information you've given very clear, very understandable, understand how it breaks down. I'm thinking in my head how much people might want investments, and that this whole piece of the budget, is a trade-off situation. If we get want an investment, something has to give somewhere else. So that's a comment of sorts. I guess I would like to know, we always talk about the increase on a tax levy. If you had a $500,000 house, you have all your taxes, the whole taxes on that house goes to education. Is that, I'm not sure about that. That's something it doesn't. And so I think it'd be very useful to, to know how that happens, so that when people see an increase, they're thinking it's in top of everything else that they pay. So, what portion of a household tax is actually going to education? And that's not something you can answer here clearly or exactly, but
We can answer it pretty closely.
okay.
So Lisa, are you all right if I jump in on this one?
Yes, please.
Great. Okay. So property taxes go to three entities. They go to the school district, the city, and the county. And I used to have numbers off the top of my head of what the mill rate was or tax rate was, but with the revaluation, I don't have it like at my fingertips. But the easiest approximation is that about 2% go to the county, maybe even a little bit less than that. And then the city and the district almost evenly split it.
Okay.
And so what does happen from a process end is that each of those three entities sets their own budget, and therefore what is the recommended tax income that they will need. And then it gets added together to create one final tax bill for a homeowner. But that's what it is. It's about 50-50 between us and the city, and 1 to 2% from the county.
And so that the amount quoted of approximate, increase in taxes is just the school side of that. Whatever the city adds on top of that is the other issue, which is not our concern unless we go talk to the city. At this point, with this past year, I know you're doing with exact measurement, exact salaries and benefits. Could you give the average salary and benefit package for an Ed Tech 3, a teacher, and
Yes.
other? Yeah.
If
Is it the same as last year, roughly?
no, it's higher this coming year.
Okay.
And I don't want to put Heather on the spot about whether she can pull up the averages that were used for ed tech teacher for the current vacancy positions as a whole.
So last year, rule of thumb was $100,000 per teacher.
Yeah, that was our like back of the napkin, easy to remember.
I mean, that's kind of where
Yep.
we're at. So percentage wise, it might be like 5% more than that.
Yeah, and it won't quite work out to where it matches up with the contract because we're also looking at an average where it's based on years of experience of our current staff. And so usually your staff fluctuates a little bit
Mhm.
in terms of years of experience. So, but Heather, I don't know if that's something you can give tonight or if you want to give it next week.
I can give it tonight. So for an Ed Tech 3, the salary is 43,721. But then when you factor in all the benefits, the retirement, Social Security, PFML, and health insurance, it comes out to 67,000 for an Ed Tech 3.
And can you do that same thing for a teacher?
Yeah, so we had talked about 110,000, and that's what we used when we calculated teacher reductions. But let me see here. Just don't see if we have a teacher. Yeah, yes, we put in for a teacher. Let's see. If you give me just
Really
a
appreciate it.
moment. So we have let's see, salary of 60,000 for a pre-K teacher. And when you add on the benefits, that brings you to 84,420. So that's what our vacancy salary is. But that would depend again on somebody's experience once they're hired.
Okay, I appreciate that. That just gives me a sense of where we are at with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it. That's all for me, Chair.
Great, thank you. Really good conversation. Were there another few slides to walk through, or?
I think I accidentally skipped the last one, which is just what's coming in January. So on January 12th, we would
Oh, I'm so
share.
sorry. Was there a slide about Portland adult education?
Oh, yes, you are right. So sorry. Ryan, would you mind bringing those slides back up? I'm so excited to get to it. I forgot we had another slide. All right, so we did want to just call out a few things around Portland Adult Ed specifically. So just to kind of level set where Portland Adult Ed gets their revenues from, it comes from three sources. One is local, which is the tax levy. For this roll forward budget, we did include or just held that flat. To increase that would have to require additional tax levy. State revenue, we are expecting at this time that it will remain flat. And then the last place that PAE gets their funds is from grants, which right now our best estimate is that their grants will decrease by 161,000. It's worth noting that some of the PAE grants are very general in nature, so we have some flexibility in how they're used and can use them for different types of programming and expenditures. However, some of their grants are very specific. So, for example, they have a grant that can only be used for training certified nurses assistants, for example. So those grants cannot just be easily moved to different types of programming. So in our roll forward, Portland Adult Ed is coming in at 5.7 million in expenditures, which is 7.4% increase. Which is based on estimated contractual personnel requirements and the same 2% that we talked about earlier for the non-personnel costs. And so it stands to reason that with the revenues decreasing, we will require a similar reduction in expenses, which requires changes in programming. This is based on very early data, so it may yet change. We're happy to have the PAE team come in and speak at a future committee meeting if this is an area of interest. But we did just want to call it out that this is an area that we know will require some potential changes. And in future versions of the budget, we will actually separate Portland Adult Ed as well as food service out so that you can see them discreetly. But we did not do that for the roll forward. So.
Oh, that's helpful. I have a follow-up question too. I'm curious about whether functionally the same levers apply to this with the just the conundrum of increased expenditures and decreased revenue. is it within the board's discretion to, I'm not saying that I'm advocating for this, but would it be, within the board's discretion to say, okay, well, we would like to fill that gap using fund balance or using, budgetary resources that we have available to us? I'm asking specifically about whether those levers that we have that we talked about before also apply to Portland adult education.
They do.
They do with one caveat that I want to add, which is adult ed has its own fund balance. And I don't know, and I'd have to look into what the law is about using the fund balance from K-12 into adult ed. Adult ed certainly doesn't have the same level of fund balance that exists. And so that's a question. I will just name that typically what the board has done is that it's had the local or property tax revenue increase be the same in the K-12 space and in adult ed. And so if you actually see the budget, it'll oftentimes show actually those separated, but that's the case. So, but it's certainly possible that you could say that you want to do more of an increase.
Okay. That is helpful. Thank you. Other questions? Okay, we can move on.
So if I could just share one piece that Lisa shared at the top of this presentation, and just to like reemphasize, is we're always looking for the committee if there are areas of potential investment that you want the team to analyze or to look at or to consider. And we're going to this year take the investments that come to us from staff, curate them, and share them with this committee, so that it won't just be on the committee to come up with ideas and that pressure, but we'll also share with you what comes to us so that you have that even before the superintendent budget.
That is very helpful. Follow-up question to that. I'm curious about, as board member Opperman was alluding to, when somebody brings forward a request for an investment, okay, well, where's the trade-off? I'm curious about whether staff will be either identifying or following up on things that are brought forward from committee members, areas that might also, there might, I'm not saying there are, but the possible existence of potential savings in targeted areas. I'm curious about what your thoughts are on where those would originate and how that research and analysis would happen.
I think those can originate in both places.
Yep.
I think that if you've, for anybody who's been able to join on the staff listening sessions that we've had, that the board's been able to join with myself and some other staff, you very seldom hear of areas where there's reductions, and you often hear about a need. And if you were to talk to the central office, you'd probably hear the same. And so it's hard sometimes for department leads to say like, hey, I don't need this anymore. But it'll be a give and take in this whole process. So we will certainly be having those conversations with leadership, and we will take that gladly from the board as well.
Timing wise, board member Opperman, go ahead. I can hold my question until.
No, you go first and then something.
Okay. So I'm curious about timing around, so we get the opportunity to meet again a week from tonight, which is great. Are you looking for committee members to bring forward examples of potential requested investment or potential savings in our next committee meeting in January? What are your thoughts on timing around those things?
I was just looking at the schedule real quick. So we have on the schedule for the next one a follow-up around capital improvement planning. Yep. A follow-up on the budget. And so, yes, that would be a great opportunity to help us get topics, and especially leading into winter break. And then to answer or go any deeper on adult ed where there's questions.
Okay. Board member Opperman, go ahead.
Thank you. I've gone to a couple staff meetings, and I have a question and a request. First off, what I heard was that our perceived idea of their perceived idea of getting a percent increase in materials was not realized. So if they thought they were getting 3%, they may have got closer to 2%, even though the board said 3%, and maybe the school budget, each individual school's budget had a 3% increase. I would, it's another layer, but I would really like to know as they start doing things and know where things are going in June. I'd like to know how the principals are breaking things down, so that we know that, you know, if they're seeing a stronger need in one area than another, and that's their, you know, bailiwick, but I just would like to know what that is, so that, you know, and that it's aware, it's brought to the attention of the staff that this was happening. I think that would really help in some clarity and all. So that's what I would request of the principals.
Board Member Oppen, we can gladly share that with you and the board at any time. And so one of the things that we do is we have our principals go through a process of taking the non-personnel that's allocated, right? We often think of the money that sits in supplies versus professional development versus staff travel as being at the discretion of the principal to assign based on their local context. And so we can share with you how they then assigned it. And that usually happens in June, but it wouldn't be uploaded until July. So it'd probably be that first meeting in August.
Okay.
That we could look at that. The other piece, you're right, that last year it was 3% that was allocated. Right now it's a placeholder for 2%. I will tell you that one of the things that the finance team has been digging in on is this question around how do we more equitably, or how do we finance based on student need? And so a school with 75% low income, how does their budget look different than a school with a lower number than that? And so we've done some work on that. We can present that at a future meeting as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really appreciate that. Thank you for that, because that's hard work.
Yes.
With that, Chair Bryden, are you comfortable if I preview the policies?
I am. Thank you so much to the entire finance team for setting the foundation for this process to be really successful. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this and acknowledge that there will be much more. So thank you.
Great. And I'm going to look over here just because this is where my screen is to share.
Yep.
As mentioned, this committee, every meeting looks at a small number of policies and makes recommendations on what they would like to see potentially adjusted in them, really thinking about it from your lens as members of the finance, personnel, and operations. And so you guys really have oversight of those areas of the district. And so strengthening the policy as best as possible. A reminder that these are simply recommendations that go to the policy committee. And from a sequencing, it goes to you. Then it goes to Drummond Woodsum for legal guidance on our policy, and then it goes to the policy committee. And so there's 5 up today. It's a little bit grouped, a little bit potpourri. And so there's policy EBAA, which looks at chemical hazards, EBCA, which is around comprehensive emergency management plan, ACAF around workplace bullying, CB, which is not even the job description, but just the overall position of superintendent, and then CBI, the evaluation of the superintendent. And so if it's all right with you, I'm going to leave it in this mode Chair Bryden, will you facilitate the conversation just to capture any notes that come up?
Sure, yes, that sounds good. Thanks for explaining why we're seeing what we're seeing. Okay, so let's start with EBAA, chemical hazards. So the recommendation being that the superintendent will identify a chemical hazard safety officer and adjust language so that that person will complete the reporting training and other activities. I will open the floor to committee members to opine on whether there's agreement on those recommendations to move forward or different ones. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
Okay, I think those recommendations are fine. I did have, from my experience as a chemistry teacher, I think having a somebody who's checking what's going on in all the buildings as chemical hazard safety officer would be good. Not a small job because it's involved with custodial type things and building type aspects. But one of the ones that I think is sometimes, and I hope it's not, but I know in my experience was neglected is the, let me get my notes on this, the MSDS sheets that when stuff comes in from a company, those sheets are there, that if they should be kept in a place. And as I look at science classes, of course, there's a place that always shows up some kind of solvent or something, but art classes as well, and I don't know what other ones. So I think however those are managed is just something, not that it's in this policy, I just wanted to say it so that it goes out as a thought to, we may be doing just fine. I have not go check closets anywhere, but that's the kind of thing that over time needs to be addressed. And when you get a new teacher in of any sort, or a new custodian in, that they do get taught. That is in the policy, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, Board Member Opperman, if I understood you, I think I hear you saying that the recommendations here make sense and wanting to make sure that in this, as in so many areas, that the policy then gets implemented, operationalized among staff in an effective way. Correct? Okay, great. All right. Thank you for making a note of that. And Board Member Opperman, your hand is up from when you asked that question, correct?
When you're going to get to
Okay.
the next couple of them,
I will assume that you have something to say. Yes.
they're fine.
Yep.
I think that was all my comments were, that they're fine.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So
and then I might say something, not much.
Yes, that makes sense. So I was going to group the next three, the comprehensive emergency management plan, the workplace bullying, and the school superintendent general policies together as all being policies for which no changes are recommended based on staff review, and just double checking with committee members on agreement with that. Board Member Opperman, are you just voicing like, yes, that agree?
I'm voicing
Okay.
to say something because
Go ahead.
my screens are all over the place. I'm looking at my notes instead of the screen, which I get to push. Anyway,
Go ahead, Board Member Opperman.
on the one on superintendent, there's two words, administer and supervise. I want to make sure that that's fine. It doesn't necessarily need to be different. Is it strong enough? So that it's it's more all-encompassing kind of. Yeah. So there's that level of clarity. That was just my
no, that makes sense. I think it makes sense. Would you be I think
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Does it make sense to make a recommendation that Drummond and the policy committee look at those words in the context of you know,
The expansive job, I mean, supervise and administers is what a principal does, but decision making, is a piece that I don't think that those say. And I don't remember that. So that was just
yeah,
that
yep.
it's just something in there that it would be perhaps making the understanding of the roles a bit stronger. If we
Okay.
want it to be stronger. I don't know. Again, that's up to policy.
Yep. I am very curious about curious about two things. I'm curious about how the policy committee might review those specific terms. Also curious about Drummond's opinion in terms of how use of those terms or different terms might situate the district, especially relative to, model policies that are used across the state, and just wanting to get a little bit more clarity around that.
Sure. No, anything. It just when I read that, I said, eh. It didn't, it was weak, but
Yeah.
it may not be able to be stronger, but it would be useful. But anyway, that's
Yeah.
all I have to say about that. Other one's fine.
Okay. All right, just pausing for a moment to allow for the taking of the notes. Okay. And then the last one, evaluation of the superintendent. So recommendations to discuss would be to include a timeline for goal setting and evaluation, clarify the use of the R2 policy around staff feedback, and just to be more specific about whether the evaluation in whole or in part is public, part of the superintendent's personnel file, or needs to be treated in some other way. So those three components of potential revision and potential adjustment, I'll open the floor for discussion about that. Board Member Noor, go ahead.
I had a question about the R2, the use of R2. Could we just go over what that was again?
So the R2 so the R policies are, so the broad level policy that my understanding is that the regular policies without the R have to do with the direction from the board at the highest level, and then the R policies are how they actually get effectuated. It's the more step by step. This is what actually happens, and my understanding is that board votes generally don't happen on the R policies. Is that accurate, Superintendent Scallon?
I think those are accurate, except the nuances that we're talking about the superintendent evaluation,
Yep.
right? So it seems hard for the superintendent to set it. If I can just show something on why this was raised. So this is here on our website, the superintendent. And then if we click in, we can see the evaluation for the superintendent. And then the first R talks about what the school board's responsibility is in doing it and completing it, and that everybody will do it individually, and then the board chair will write up a summary. R2 really doesn't say much. And so it provides this please comment, and then has the same criteria. And then that's it. And so it leaves open this question about where you get staff feedback and input, and about how. And so that's why we flagged it as an area that the board should consider looking at, to either be clear about how it happens or adjust it in some other way.
Which staff members, how often, how that all dovetails with the board review, essentially.
Yeah, it almost feels like this is designed to create a 360.
Yep.
But it doesn't quite. And so that's the question.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. Thank you. Board member Noor, does that address what you were looking to better understand?
Yes. A follow-up question to that. Has this been used recently by any staff? Not like asking what has been said, but is this something that is active?
Um, my my understanding is that it has not, and that evaluations have been the purview of board members.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Board member Opperman, go ahead.
Yes, I think with the R2, clarity, and we do get feedback, and it's anecdotal, it's sporadic, it depends who shows up, or emails or whatever. I would like to see a systematic way of collecting it, whether it's part of it is through some kind of survey. I mean, just those kinds of things thought through clearly, so that, it's there, it's effective, and, if you have, um, comment at one end or the other, somehow the same thing that we do is, which is to say, any comment. So if you say like a 1 or a 5, why a 1, why a 5, that kind of thing. So, but how to manage it on a scale of how many thousand employees, and, or whether it, however it's done. But I agree. I think it needs to be balanced, is I guess the term I would use for that, is the staff feedback is balanced across the staff, in some systemic way. I love to hate, don't use system. I get sick of the word systemic, but anyway.
Board member Sawtelle, I see your hand. I do want to ask one quick follow-up question about the R policies, and I'll go right to you after that. So my question has to do with, so I just checked the R1 and the R2 for this topic specifically, and I'm not seeing dates of implementation and revision. Is that something that is generally done for the R policies, or is that just potentially a gap on these?
It's a really good question. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I would guess that they were updated about the same time or reviewed the last time the policy was reviewed, but I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Board member Sawtelle, go ahead.
Just really briefly, in thinking about, getting feedback from staff, the HR team talked about redesigning a TNTP type survey. I would think feedback like that could be elicited through that survey.
I agree. I think it's good timing that those topics are all happening at the same time. The other thing that comes to mind for me is, and I'm glad that Drummond is part of the process of moving this work along, because I'm very curious to hear their thoughts on that last bullet point in terms of the evaluation in whole or in part being potentially made public, just given that, the topic at hand is, I don't want to be flouting labor laws or, creating privacy concerns, and also striking that balance of transparency and accountability with the community. And so I'd be looking for Drummond to opine on their recommendations for how to strike that balance. Board member Opperman, go ahead.
I guess my question is, my comment would be that if is any other staff have their evaluation public? Teachers, janitors, other administrators, other superintendent, assistant superintendents, are they those evaluations public? And I think that's a guide on that.
All right, was that a rhetorical question or a
Julianne, you're muted, so it's kind of rhetorical.
As I said, it's a Julie question. It is, I think that if evaluations are open, everybody's evaluations should be open.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
In a nice way. So.
Right. Yeah. Yes, thank you for that. Other comments, questions, opinions? All right, I am not seeing any. I think that's a good set of recommendations to move forward for the rest of this process. And so looking forward to seeing how this conversation unfolds in the policy committee as well. I believe we are at the end of our agenda. Is that correct? Oh my goodness, folks get to have a whole 26 minutes of a gap between this and their next meeting. I am so happy for you. Those of you that have a next meeting at 7:30.
Always join us.
Yeah, I could. Yeah. Thank you for that invitation. So I'm just going to give one beat to see if there's any unrelated topics that anybody would like to raise. Seeing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Board Member Opperman, thank you. Oh,
it's not a motion to adjourn. It's sorry to bring up something, but I just was wondering, we had talked a little bit about a building type evaluation or study, or I don't know, the question is, will that come up soon?
So I'm going to answer and then I'm going to invite Dr. Scallon to correct me if I'm wrong. So I think I heard him say that in our next meeting, one of the agenda items was the SIP, the capital improvements plan. And so I assume that there's a lot of overlap there in terms of the need to redo the facilities study or analysis that was done in 2016 for current state. So Dr. Scallon, am I right in thinking that that's naturally going to be part of the conversation when we talk about the SIP?
I think the early stage of that conversation, yes. So the facilities team is in the process of putting together an RFP.
Okay.
That would go out. And they're trying to craft the RFP so that it can both do that facilities master plan, like you talked about, and replace the 2016, 2017 study and really help us pinpoint where we need to make facilities investments.
Yep.
Also working within that RFP to allow people to respond to it that could just be about our energy use and thinking about what that looks like. So whether that is solar panels or other proposed solutions for energy efficiency. And so we're trying to make it so that you can apply to all of it or a piece of it. And so that's also in there.
So to make sure I understand, would it be 2 RFPs or
I
a
think right now
segmentable RFP?
I think we're trying to make it a segmentable RFP so that somebody could apply to all of it or just carve out a single piece.
Okay.
So yes.
Is there the possibility of separating them out just for the purposes of allowing the work to move at a different pace?
There is. Our RFP process takes a while, no matter what. And so this was us trying to actually like make it a little bit more efficient. And I know that the facilities team has had some conversation with the city about potentially participating in theirs. I think again, you had a question about whether that's faster or slower because we're doing an RFP around energy efficiency. So what we can do is take this topic and get you an update at the meeting next week.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, if there's a motion to adjourn, I would take that.
So moved.
Thank you, Board Member Opperman. And a second? Board Member Sawtelle and Board Member Noor, thank you so much. And show of hands. We are unanimously adjourned at 7:07 p.m. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Bye.